Well, hello and welcome. I do love that intro and great to have you with us today on Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. And good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you joined us. Welcome to the show and thank you for joining us. So, yes, the format, as ever, is a brief introduction from me. And we then have a guest. As we do, Bruce Goodwin, who is a locals organizer for New Culture Forum, and we'll be introducing him in a minute. So, folks, where are we? The state of our country, the state of our nation, it deserves a response, demands a response. And I know many of us, including myself, we're no longer happy to be quiet. We're no longer happy to complain and then do nothing. And we hope very much that you feel the same way. And one of the themes of this show is, firstly, what a bad state our country has become, has fallen into, but also what a fantastic country we are and what many, many good things we have going for us. So it's not all bad news. And I find the state of our country all the more frustrating because actually Britain does have so many good things going for it. So, where are we? We're overtaxed, overborrowed, overspent. We can't control our borders. Shoplifting, one of the issues that we'll be addressing, seems to become more rife. There seems to be some kind of law and order or societal type breakdown. I think we live in concerning and tumultuous times. We have a deputy prime minister, a left-leaning deputy prime minister who's also housing minister, who appears to have three homes. Okay, one of them is an official London residence, and her house in her constituency has some sort of complicated trust arrangement, I gather. But she's just bought a house on the south coast, 270 miles from her constituency. It really doesn't look good. But you may say, well, what's good about Britain? What have we got going for us? I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. We have a lot going for us, actually. We have more globally top-rated universities than the rest of Europe put together. We have the world's most watched and popular football league, the Premiership. These are just some examples. We have the English language. We speak the same language as the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and English is by far the world's most commonly spoken second language. And certainly for many American firms coming to London, coming to Europe, it's a slam dunk to come here. We also have the world's best known royals, but we have to say, not always for the right reasons. Okay, so that's my brief intro. And we will now join with our guest, and we will have quite a few interesting stories for you as we come in. Welcome, Bruce Goodwin. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, great. And like you, I really appreciated the intro music as a grew up with the music of the 70s and 80s, which, as we all know, is the best.
So, well, indeed, surely that should go down as one of the great.
My prog rock poster behind me.
Yeah, one of the great guitar riffs there, I think.
It was.
Yeah, just briefly, because you do some local work for the New Culture Forum, Bruce. Just tell us a little bit about that and the New Culture Forum, and well, I'll ask you again at the end if we got time.
Yes, thank you, Tim, and it's nice. Rare is the opportunity to speak for me, anyway. But yes, how did I get involved with New Culture Forum? I mean, New Culture Forum has been around for quite a long time, actually, since 2006, I think, and it started life as a think tank. But during particularly the COVID period, I think there was a desire to reach out to people, and so the podcasts began the pushing out more content through alternative media, and then the idea came to set up these locals groups, one of which I run, and the idea is really to engage with people, talking about I mean, it's basic free speech, really, just being able to talk openly about what one feels about what's going on culturally. The focus is obviously culture, and an attempt to maybe replace the death of the pub and other things. So why did I get involved? I some time ago, I suppose, like many, was becoming disenchanted with politics at large.
Yeah.
I'd started to see the fragmentation of it, and I wanted something that wasn't party affiliated, where I could really get.
Yes, I felt the same with my work with the Freedom Association.
Exactly.
Although I have my party sympathies, of course.
Exactly. And it's so good. I think the problem with parties fragmenting is that, particularly if you're of a certain persuasion, you probably agree on 90% of things, but you fall out on the 10%, and that's why the right is fragmented, I think, and now the left. And it's really, for me, it's being able to get together with people and talk about the things we have in common. The people that have just basically disappeared from the non-voters.
People who've given up voting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's waking up the silent majority as well. There's another thing that strikes me, which is that politics being all over the place. I think it's now one of the advantages of being in the UK, of course, is that we have our little platoons, and these grassroots movements that are cropping up now, I feel are ways of actually pulling politics back to where we want it. Parties are vehicles, but our two-party system has broken down. This is a problem. So now grassroots has to take over in a way, and try and re-assimilate things, and hopefully in the way that we want it to be.
Yeah, good.
I love it when I have my events because you get people from Reform, Conservative, people who just not stop voting, even one or two old style Labour voters, maybe, all in the same room talking about things that they agree on, and that's the important thing. It's what we agree on. Democracy is messy, and we're not going to agree on everything. Good
stuff, Bruce. No, thank you. And it's headed by former London Assembly member Peter Whittle. And presumably, just to finish off on this, if people just want to find New Culture Forum, if they just search or Google New Culture Forum, they'll find it. It'll come up, won't it?
Yeah, yes, indeed. newcultureforum.org.uk.
Okay.
There's, or you can go on YouTube and find them quite easily and subscribe. There's the mothership, New Culture Forum, and then there's New Culture Forum Locals, which is free to register. And if you go into the website, there's an NCF Locals icon you can click on. You can register through that, and then you'll find the nearest group that's local to you. There's about 35 around the country now, I think.
All right. Okay, thanks, Bruce. So there you go. Just search New Culture Forum. Okay, we must move on. So I mentioned Three Homes, Angela Rayner. Although, as I said in my intro, I think it is a little bit more complicated than that. Have you got any brief thoughts on that, Bruce, before we go to our main topics?
Yeah, well, I'm not a tax expert, so on, but I think that the phrase that you live by the sword, you die by the sword springs to mind. I think that if you spend a good portion of your time criticizing your political opponents,
calling them scum, for example.
Well, yes. I think that you have to be extremely careful about how you go about your business. Now, I'm slightly skeptical as to whether the story is entirely correct, that she as the housing minister, you would have thought she would have access to or already understand how the stamp duty system works, and
deputy PM. You'd hope she'd be able to get some advice from somewhere.
Exactly. So I'm a little bit skeptical, and I think she's realised that oh dear, yes, I'm in trouble here. So she's tried to sidestep this by referring herself to the Standards Committee. Now, whether that saves her or not, I don't know. I think Starmer, I suspect that they will step round this, because Starmer has already lost control of the factions within his party, and if Rayner were to go, I think that would make a serious problem for him. But the overall problem for Labour is,
I think if she gets pinged, Bruce, I think it'd be very difficult for her to stay on. Do you think?
Yeah, we'll have to see what the select committee said, but I mean, it's will they have access to emails and so on where she was definitively given that advice or not? I mean, I simply don't know. But it if she stays, it's a problem, because I think that people are getting fed up with this type of example of behaviour from politicians, so that won't sit well for Labour. But if she if she goes, then Starmer has a problem, because I think the left of his party, which is already fragmenting, the Greens are now the new hard left party.
New leader.
There's very little to do with the environment, as far as I can tell. And then there's the new nearly said Harry Corbett, the Jeremy Corbyn party.
Tara and Corbyn, otherwise known as Fruit and Nut. Yes,
exactly. So he's got a problem, which is amazing, given I always felt that having a huge majority like that would actually make the party less wieldy for him in government, and that's proved to be the case.
It has. Okay, well, look, yes, great. Thanks for your comments on that, Bruce. I'd largely agree with you. I think she's going to be a problem whether she stays or goes. To be honest. Okay, well, let's move on to our stories that we've got. So what we've got coming up is we've got compulsory ID cards. We've got facial recognition. We've got shoplifting. We've got the pub. Bruce mentioned the pub. We've got the future of the pub. We've got the UK's debt, and we've got an interesting story. We always like to end on a sort of "and finally" kind of story about how a minute a day can give you a longer life. That'll be an interesting one.
Wow.
So I know it sounds
a minute of the Freedom Association. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So our first story. The first story that we're going to look at is to do with smashing the gangs and Labour's big idea. So here it is. Smash the gangs latest. I mean, the only things being smashed at the minute seem to be the record numbers of people coming across the channel. Labour's big idea. This is from the Daily Mail. Blair wanted them years ago. Now, as Macron demands action, well, I'm not sure he's in a position to demand anything, having lost his parliamentary majority and can't get a budget through. PM does a U-turn. Every person in Britain could be forced to sign up for digital ID after Macron demanded action to tackle the scourge of illegal working. This, of course, is one of the French complaints, is it's far too easy to come over, and it's far too attractive to come over. So Keir Starmer told the cabinet he would be exploring options around the concept as part of a wider package of reforms designed to make it harder for illegal immigrants to work here. So it's examining proposals 15 years after the idea was first floated, following an outcry about the impact on civil liberties. And under one option, anyone applying for a new job would be required to produce their digital ID to demonstrate that they have the right to live and work in the UK. I did read the other day, just as a side issue, firms can now be fined if they inadvertently perhaps take on somebody who's here illegally. They can be fined tens of thousands of pounds, which seems a little draconian. Now, talking of ID, well, here's my ID, and I have it in my wallet. Normally moths fly out whenever I open it, but I did manage to retrieve my ID card. And in fact, it is like many of you, I'm only showing you the back for obvious reasons. Like many of you, I carry this pretty much wherever I go. It's my UK driving license. Glad to say it only has the UK flag on it, not a certain other one. And it has my full name. It has a photo of me, not particularly flattering. It has my address, my date of birth, address. It has a specimen scrawled, my signature, etc. I mean, that seems to me to be sufficient ID. Not that I want to be stopped in the street and asked for my ID. We're not a show your papers form of society. But Bruce, what do you think about this whole issue of ID cards or digital ID?
Funny how these ideas don't seem to go away once the technocrats get hold of them. I think there's a common theme that's going to run through everything we speak about, which is that government is always seemingly attending to correct the symptoms and not the cause. Whatever subject we're talking about, I think the ID cards are suddenly necessary because we have illegal immigration, or we have I could go on and on, but it seems to me if we were simply to go back and address the causes of the malaise which this country finds itself in, we wouldn't have to be worrying about the overblown welfare system, for instance, which is what Macron has also referred to. If you dealt with that, if you enforced dual borders, then would we be having to have this conversation about ID cards? Rightly, this is something people are very skeptical about, because it's putting people on databases. It is clearly an erosion of freedom, which I think the majority of people don't want. I spoke to a friend the other day who I reminded him that years ago, he when I was complaining about when Blair was trying to introduce these things, he said, well, I'm not worried, I've got nothing to hide. And I reminded him of that, and he said, yeah, you were right, because it's the thin end of the wedge. Where will this end? That's what we don't know, and that's why I think we should actually resist this temptation to bring in what will become, I think, just more erosions of our freedom.
Yeah, I think there's a certain type of political mentality to whom the idea of compulsory ID, everybody has to be told to do something. I mean, I carry my driving license voluntarily. There are times when it's not, we are not a show us your papers society, but there are times when it's not unreasonable. If you're going to an event, you're trying to get into a club maybe, which is adults only, that kind of thing. There are times when it's not unreasonable to be asked to voluntarily show some form of ID. I think that's fine. It is the compulsion element, Bruce, that I think most worries people.
Yes, I think we're all reasonable people understand that there are times when you have to show ID. When you go to the airport, you get out your passport and so on. If it's fair and reasonable, it passes the smell test. Same with everything, whether it's tax or this. But when, as you say, it's becoming compulsory, and we saw this during lockdown as well. And if the nudge, the nudge units should not exist. And the next thing you know, you can't do this or that unless you have had your vaccines or whatever it is. So
yeah,
yes,
it'll
I'm
be
very
another
much.
unit today and a kick in the privates tomorrow. Is sort of my worry. But this leads us on, this whole issue of ID and what do we trust people with, leads us on to our next story. And so we get a kind of a 2-for-1 with this particular story, which is from the iPaper. And Sainsbury's trials facial recognition to combat theft. Sainsbury's plans to introduce facial recognition technology across its supermarkets as part of an attempt or an effort to identify shoplifters. The UK's second largest supermarket chain has begun an 8-week trial in 2 shops, or 2 stores, I suppose, as part of a crackdown on the crime, which has increased sharply in recent years, as I commented on earlier. It is working with let's get that right, the facial recognition company FaceWatch. Sounds rather ominous.
Yes.
And will start using the technology this week at its superstore in Sydenham and a branch of Sainsbury's in Bath. However, privacy campaigners have described it as chilling. Use of facial recognition in shops has been heavily criticised, with rivals Asda facing thousands of complaints. Well, Bruce, this raises all sorts of issues, both on shoplifting and on using this facial recognition software, which I know the police are starting to use as well.
Yeah, well, this is slightly different because this is a private company introducing a measure to try and deal with a problem, which shouldn't be a problem, number one, and it shouldn't have to be theirs to deal with, because once again, you're dealing with the symptoms and not the cause. You've decided that it's okay that shoplifting is too big a deal. Police time is better spent on scouring the internet rather than actually stopping real crime.
Arresting comedy writers.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to be too critical of supermarkets, although they should be cognizant of the fact that they shouldn't be upsetting their customers, and I suspect that this will come as a trial thing will come to a screeching halt, because people will not like this, and they'll find that they're losing custom over it. But the reality is that they shouldn't have to be trialing these things. I was amazed, actually. I went into a small store in the high street locally, and suddenly, and it's just a card shop, and there's perspex up over the tills and a barrier, so that you have to go round one way and pass the till. This is. I'm an old codger, but this is a million miles.
Don't get hard on yourself, Bruce.
Yeah, from a million miles from life when I was growing up, when we were a high trust society. So we really do need to address the causes of this, I think
it's interesting you mentioned the trust aspect, Bruce. I think we are definitely becoming a less cohesive, less trusting society. I think this widespread shoplifting, which is now being, it's not some poor guy who's homeless, running in and nicking a sandwich.
That's what's crazy. I mean, I might even admit to nicking a bubble gum when I was a kid, but
oh dear.
But no, this is widespread. It's been sanctioned. That's the worst thing. That the police have openly admitted that 250 quid. Well, off you go.
And I particularly feel for the small independent shop owner, many of whom are of Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi heritage. That when stuff is nicked from their store, it's on them. With Sainsbury's,
it's more costs. it's more costs on
Yeah,
small business.
yeah. We're paying for this at the
Yeah,
till.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I don't know if they insure themselves against these losses, but of course that's so on top of that they have the cost of trying to put in redressing measures. So it's just another thing that's piling down on the high street,
yeah.
which has enough headaches already. So
Well, yeah, and you know, enough small local independent shops closing. You know, all the banks are going. You know, the so-called high street banks. You know, can we even call them that anymore? I mean, I do agree with you, Bruce. You know, big supermarkets, they should not be put in this position. They do have the resources to deal with this kind of thing, but they shouldn't be having to pay for that. And of course, we will pay for it at the till
yes,
with
yes.
higher bills. Okay, well let's move on to another something that affects our everybody's local area, and that is the decline of the numbers of pubs that are closing. Is really quite extraordinary. Now this story is from the Mirror. Heston backs fight to save pubs. This is the celebrity chef, if that's the right phrase, Heston Blumenthal. Heston Blumenthal has joined the Mirror's call for action to help save Britain's threatened pubs. Celebrity chefs say local boozers are national treasures we must all protect. The celebrity chef, who also warns weight loss drugs will sap diners' appetites, that's an interesting take on it, spoke out as nearly 5 pubs a week were lost in the first half of 2025. Heston said pubs were vital to bring people together and support local economies. Every pub is a parliament, as they say, and support local economies, saying the pub is a national treasure and must be protected. Do you think our pubs are a national treasure, Bruce?
Yes, I do. Very much so. I think they're becoming a vital element of how we interact. I mean, it's not just that we need to keep having, you know, these face-to-face conversations, particularly in an era of the social media. We are social animals, and if we're not interacting so much because we're working from home, or we're interacting on X or any other social media platform, it becomes even more vital that we have these community type of places where people can meet. And I'm still an analog guy, so I love to look in somebody's eyes and be able to see the expression, and you understand the person when you're having a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of shows, Bruce, are great, but there's no substitute for meeting in person, is there? Or IRL.
I can say what I really mean. Yeah, but that's the point. I mean, I think I don't know that there is I would fall short of saying there's a conspiracy to shut down places where people can go and, as you say, quite rightly, they're the local parliament. But it's where local information is passed around. It's interesting that the Mirror, of course, is doing this. It has traditionally been a place where working class people, of course,
the old-fashioned boozer.
I'm not sure that the sort of twee versions of pubs we have these days are quite, they growing up, they didn't serve food, they were full of smoke, and you certainly weren't going to get collared going home, driving home afterwards. So there's been a sort of slow grind on the changes that we've seen in what the traditional pub was, but I still think that it's a vital element in local communities and so on, and I think you're absolutely right to and it's I personally would I don't know. I mean, I think business rates probably something that should be looked
National insurance, the
but I
bringing
mean,
the national insurance
just
limit
the
down.
sheer cost of a drink now is appalling.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Changing social habits, cheap supermarket booze. I think national insurance. A lot of people have their first job working in a pub. Bringing the national insurance limit, the employers from 9,000 to 5,000. I think COVID and the lockdowns did enormous. I mean, I don't know how some of these places have survived. But okay, so we move on. Thank you, Bruce, for your comments there. So we're now going to have a quick look at what else is coming up here on Unprecedented TV. Okay, let's go on to our next story, which is, I think this is a story that's going to run and run, and it's to do with the UK's financial position. Overtaxed, overborrowed, overspent, fears as UK debt costs hit 27-year high. So you said to me before, Bruce, you'd like to have something to say about this. I know this is an area where you've got some experience.
Yeah, my background was in financial markets for several decades, and although I wasn't working in 1976, but I do remember it quite well. I think there's some good commentary coming out now, but I think there's a lot of talk about the similarities with now and the 70s, but I wanted to actually highlight some of the differences and how that might affect the politics of it. There's in 76 when we went to the IMF, there was a different situation. We were in a period after the Bretton Woods settlement had crashed, after the US went off the gold standard in 1970. We were in a sort of managed float situation, and the UK had spent a phenomenal amount of money on trying to protect the pound from falling. And the background to that was a huge balance payment deficit as well as a public sector deficit. But the debt GDP then was only 46%, whereas today it's just over 100.
Yes.
Also, we have a very different economy with a large invisibles element to it, which helps to balance things out. And we have a financial services sector which brings in capital inflows. So we're in a very different situation. This is a clear government borrowing problem.
Yes.
But the government then in 76 actually had borrowed 10 billion from other central banks to help prop up the the pound. And they had to repay that. But they put in a facility for 3.6 billion to enhance its FX reserves, and only
seems like a relatively small
yeah,
amount. These
only 2 billion was drawn down, and it was paid back fairly quickly. But actually, Dennis Healey had a similar situation where the Labour Party was split on this. Many of them didn't want the IMF to come in because it would come with strings attached, and
they thought cuts.
Yeah, but it would mean government would have to discipline its spending. Now, the idea that well, there's a couple of things here. The IMF would now have to lend a huge sum of money, which would be equivalent to around 20% of its reserves. So I'm not sure they would be prepared to do that anyway. But the other problem is that I do not see Starmer being able to convince his party that they should accept an IMF loan when it will clearly mean, I mean, we saw what happened with the welfare reform bill. They couldn't even pass 5 billion of spending cuts.
Relatively modest cuts in a ballooning welfare budget.
Exactly. So we have a situation where the tax take is as high as it's ever been. The party itself can't countenance any cut in a bloated state, and so they're going to come back trying to do more taxes. This will inevitably cause a slowdown of the economy, and we will be in a spiral. The way this pans out, I think, assuming that the government doesn't go to the IMF, which I don't think it will, it's that the government it's being forced to borrow 20 billion every month just to pay the interest on debt and so on and so forth. And if it doesn't do anything about government spending in the forthcoming budget, it's going to find it more and more difficult to roll over and fund in the debt market.
That's the issue, Bruce. The interest rates now are way higher than they were 10 years ago. So when they're renewing 10-year debt, like you renew your 5-year mortgage.
So today
go through the roof.
Yeah. So today the government has just, I think it's 14 billion that they borrowed on 10-year debt, getting dangerously close to 5%.
Yeah, I think they paid 4.7, I think.
Yeah. No, it's more than that. It's 4.75%, but at a discount. So it's more like 480, 485.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen, and this is my experience from the markets, is that the government will have to start to fund shorter and shorter debt maturities. And if they then don't do anything, I think at that point is when we will get a more a serious sterling crisis, because you will get more extreme capital flight. The government will be funding shorter and shorter. Rates won't be going down. The sterling goes down. That feeds into inflation, and you're in a real problem then. So I think that the markets, rather than the IMF, are going to force discipline on this government.
I think they will.
But politically, politically, this is going to be very difficult, because we know that the kite was flown over wealth taxes. It started on 2% of people over 10 million, and now we're already talking about raiding the middle classes' equity in their housing assets. So it's the thin end of the wedge, and once you start going after wealth rather than income, you only get one shot at that, because it will crash the economy, I think, if you do that. It changes the nature of how people behave. They'll start doing things to avoid that tax. and the ones that can will disappear.
Tax changes people's behaviour.
Yes, it's very
Bruce,
different.
thank you for your. Better move on. We must move on. Bruce, thank you for your expert comments there. Much appreciated. Okay, so final story. Our final story, we like to end with a slightly humorous one. This was on the front page of the Times, and it did raise an eyebrow when I saw it. A minute a day of incidental activity is linked to a longer life. Many people struggle, it says, to muster the willpower to go jogging or drag themselves along to the gym. But research suggests even the exercise averse, that's put my hand up to that one, may not be entirely doomed, as just 1 minute of vigorous activity a day is linked to a longer life. The study from the University of Sydney looked at nearly 3,000 Americans with an average age of 51 who reported doing no regular exercise. They were asked to wear trackers on their wrists to monitor their movements. It found that those who did just a minute of vigorous activity, including running up the stairs, chasing after children, or heaving heavy shopping bags, had a 38% lower risk of dying over the following 6 years compared to those who had none. Bruce, what do you reckon to this?
Well, I don't know how much these professors. It sounds like they were just needed to get a grant from somewhere to do this research.
Well,
it
follow the money.
Sounds to me like stating the obvious. I think we all know we probably should get more exercise, and that if you're reasonably fit, particularly going into the latter parts of your life, that you will probably live a bit longer and feel better for it in the meantime. So I wholeheartedly concur with this article, which was unnecessary to write. Or the research was unnecessary to write.
I mean, it seems, special. What was it? Basil Fawlty's specialist subject, the bleeding obvious.
Yeah, well, but I mean, the great thing is they probably got a government grant out of it, so
probably,
good for them.
Maybe they did. Maybe who knows?
It's funny. Talking about that reminds me of I don't know if you saw yesterday these professors that were commissioned to do a report on racism in the countryside.
Oh yes, don't tell me they managed to find some.
Yeah, but they found a guy in Devon who was known as the Black Farmer, who basically said it's a load of nonsense.
Yeah, I know the bloke you mean.
The thing was that they got their government grant, so fantastic, brilliant. It's just a shame that these great minds can't do something a little bit more to contribute to society than waste their time on this stuff.
Well, Bruce, we better wind up the show, but it reminds me of that wonderful cartoon that there's some people sitting at the table, obviously delivering a report, and there's a banner saying Committee for Finding Racism, Sexism and Homophobia, and the committee chairman is saying, we are shocked to have found racism, sexism and homophobia. Anyway, folks, that's enough from Tim Scott Uncancelled for this week. Thanks to Bruce Goodwin of the New Culture Forum. Just Google or search New Culture Forum and you'll find them. They are an organisation worth looking at, as is the Freedom Association. I do.
We're all good friends, aren't we? We're all good friends.
We're sister organisations, Bruce. So, folks, thank you for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with another show. But for the time being, thanks for joining us for another episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled.